Christmas is at my mom's this year, Bridget said. Her voice was calm, almost cheerful. You stay home. It'll be more relaxing anyway. Wyatt didn't add anything. I heard him clear his throat, but say nothing. I stood in the middle of the kitchen with the phone on speaker hand still dusted with flour. I'd been rolling out crust for the pecan pie Wyatt's favorite, or at least it used to be. Sounds good, I said. I reached over and ended the call before either of them could hear the shift in my breathing. The wreath was already up, pine cones and red ribbon, the same one I'd used for the past 5 years. The garland wound around the banister stockings, neatly labeled with glittered names: Wyatt, Bridget, Nora, Milo. Mine too. I looked at the pile of wrapped gifts stacked by the stairs. Small things I'd picked up since October. A watercolor set for Nora. A book on dinosaurs for Milo. A new coffee grinder for Bridget, though I doubted she'd remember. I even knew she liked coffee. The house was still. My house is always quiet, but this felt heavier. Still in the kind of way that makes you look over your shoulder. I walked to the fireplace, the only source of light. Now the soft white bulbs I'd looped along the mantel. I sat slowly, the way you do when your knees remember everything your heart wants to forget. I didn't cry. Not because I wasn't hurt, but because there was no one here to hear it. This wasn't anger. Not yet. This was something more hollow. They didn't hate me. They didn't even mean to hurt me. They just didn't see me. I was no longer part of the plan, not because of something I did, but because I'd become easy to leave out. I leaned back into the couch cushions and stared at the twinkling lights overhead. It was strange the way erasure didn't come with noise. Just quiet. So much quiet. And in that quiet, something else began to stir. The house creaked under the cold, a sound I used to find comforting. Now it only reminded me how long it had been since anyone else walked these floors. I moved through the rooms, slowly touching what I had already touched a dozen times before. The sideboard in the dining room still held a bowl of sugared cranberries. I'd made them for Bridget's mother, the way she liked them, or at least the way she pretended to like them 2 years ago. There were neatly labeled jars of spiced preserves on the counter, little gifts I planned to tuck into their stockings. I picked one up, turned it over in my hand, and set it back down. In the hallway, I stopped at the photo wall. Wyatt, at 6, grinning with 2 missing teeth and jam on his chin. There was dust on the frame. I wiped it away with my sleeve. The kitchen smelled like cinnamon and cloves, a habit I couldn't quite let go of during the holidays. I used to joke that the house smelled like a bakery by December. No one laughed at that anymore, but I still lit the candles. That night, long after the house had gone still again, my phone buzzed. A single message from Wyatt. You okay? I stared at it for a moment too long. Then typed back, of course. All good here. The lie sat heavy in my palm. I turned the phone face down and walked upstairs. I didn't bother brushing my teeth. Just slipped into bed and pulled the covers high. But sleep didn't come. It wasn't about Christmas. Not really. It was about something deeper. About becoming someone they could do without. I turned onto my side, staring at the edge of the room where the hallway light crept in under the door. After a while, I got up. My feet knew where they were going. The linen closet. Top shelf. I stood on my toes, stretched, and pulled down the soft gray travel bag I hadn't used in years. I ran my hand over the zipper. It was time to start packing. The morning felt like any other. Coffee brewing, the cat watching me from the kitchen table like she expected me to explain something. I slid my laptop open and scrolled past store sales and automated holiday greetings. Then I typed it. Holiday trips for one. I don't know what I was expecting. Maybe a beach, maybe a cabin. But one image stopped me cold. A European river cruise. The kind with twinkling lights on the deck and cities that look like postcards. Austria, Germany, Switzerland. Departure in 4 days. 1 seat left. I stared at the screen, blinking. My finger hovered over the mouse. Then I clicked. Book now. I didn't think twice. I didn't call anyone. I didn't even read the full itinerary. I just paid. Then I closed the browser and stood there, listening to the quiet of my house wrap itself back around me. Later that afternoon, I opened the closet. The smell of wool and cedar spilled out. I pulled down the soft scarves I used to wear when Paul and I drove up to Vermont in December, folded sweaters into neat rows, picked out my warmest boots. On the dresser tucked in the back of the drawer, where I kept old letters and receipts, I found Paul's leather journal, the one from our trip to Quebec in '85. His notes were still there, little sketches of buildings, lists of restaurants, scribbled phrases in broken French. I flipped through the pages, smiling faintly. The paper smelled like paper, but under it something deeper clung, something sharp and alive. Not memory. Motion. I dropped it into the suitcase. Each item I packed didn't just fill space. It shifted something in me. I wasn't escaping. I wasn't reacting. I was choosing. By nightfall, the bag was zipped. I tucked it under the bench by the door out of sight. I didn't need it to remind me. The house was still. The wreath still hung. The jars still lined the counter. But I had already left. I left a note for my neighbor. See you next week. Don't worry. That was it. No big explanation, no dramatic exit. Just a simple gesture, the kind you'd leave if you were stepping out to run errands, not disappearing across the ocean. The cab pulled up at 7:15 a.m. I slid into the back seat with my coat zipped to the chin and my bag hugged close. The driver didn't ask questions. I didn't offer any. At the airport, the buzz of families and clinking coffee cups made everything feel distant, like I was floating behind a glass wall. No one looked at me twice. Not the ticket agent, not the couple with matching backpacks, not even the little girl who dropped her stuffed reindeer near my feet. It should have made me feel small, but instead it made me feel untouchable, like I could do anything, be anyone. When they called boarding for Gate 12A, I stood and joined the slow shuffle down the jet bridge. My seat was 22B, window seat taken. A tall man with silver hair and kind eyes offered me the aisle with a nod. Graham Teller, he said, buckling in. Vermont. Retired professor, widower. First trip alone. I smiled, polite. Celeste. Colorado. Not retired. Not exactly widowed. First trip alone, too. He grinned. Then I guess we'll survive it together. We talked about book cities we wanted to see, airports we hated. Shared plastic cups of ginger ale and a tiny packet of cookies we both decided tasted like nothing and comfort at the same time. Somewhere over the Atlantic, when the lights dimmed and the cabin hushed, he turned toward me. You've got a quiet kind of bravery, he said softly, like it wasn't a compliment, but a truth. I blinked. My throat tightened, but I managed a nod. No one had said something like that to me in years. Maybe ever. When the wheels touched down, I looked out at the frost-laced windows and whispered, "Let's begin." The first morning in Vienna felt like walking through a dream I hadn't meant to enter. Our tour guide led us along cobbled streets, dusted with snow, past windows glowing with golden light and wreaths shaped like stars. At the cathedral, the lanterns flickered low. The air held a hush, not silence, but reverence. The scent of cinnamon bread drifted through the doors of a nearby bakery, threading warmth into the cold. Graham didn't try to impress me. He walked at my pace, occasionally pointing out an architectural detail or pausing so I could catch my breath. We weren't strangers anymore, but we weren't anything else either. Just two people with quiet shoes and untold stories. Later, we found a bench tucked behind a vendor cart. His voice lowered as he told me about his wife. Her name was Ellen, and how she died during lockdown alone in a hospital neither of them had expected to need. I sat by the phone for 4 days, he said, eyes forward. She never called. She never could. I didn't speak right away. Then I said, the night Wyatt stopped calling regularly, I thought he was just busy. I kept setting the table for 3 like it was a habit I could make contagious. He nodded, and we sat with that. Not in sadness, but in truth. That night back at the hotel, I stood by the lobby tree where someone had strung paper stars and pine cones on red thread. Graham leaned beside me while a fellow traveler snapped our photo. It wasn't posed. We were just there. I uploaded it later, sitting on the edge of my bed, the heat humming in the walls. The caption was simple. Different kind of Christmas this year. I didn't expect anything. I posted it for myself. But sometime after midnight, my phone began to buzz. A like, a heart, a comment. You look peaceful. Then a name I hadn't seen in days. Wyatt. Mom, where are you? Who's that man? The morning after the post, my phone buzzed nonstop. Notifications stacked like falling cards. Friends from college, old coworkers, even the woman who used to run the church bake sale with me. All saying the same thing in different ways. You look different. You look happy. And then came the messages I hadn't expected to come so fast. Wyatt, where are you? Is that guy with you? Bridget, 2 minutes later. Did you seriously leave the country without telling us? I didn't reply. Not right away. I read the words, then set the phone face down on the hotel nightstand. It wasn't anger that held me back. It was something quieter. A kind of stillness I hadn't known I needed. I went downstairs with the carved angel I bought from a vendor the day before, light as a leaf with 2 wings folded like a secret. I wrapped it in paper and tucked it into my bag for the mantle at home. Graham was waiting by the fireplace in the lobby, flipping through a pamphlet on the local museum. He looked up as I approached and reached into his coat pocket. I found this at the market this morning, he said, holding out a scarf. It looked like you. Soft, but with a little thread of red stubbornness in it. I laughed before I could stop myself. It was the kind of laugh that bubbles up from somewhere unfamiliar, untrained, real. Thank you, I said, but my voice came out smaller than I meant it to. You don't have to wear it, he added, suddenly shy. It's just a gift. I unfolded the scarf slowly and draped it around my neck. It was warm and oddly weightless. I caught a glimpse of myself in the hotel mirror across the lobby. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't look like someone who had been left behind. I looked like someone who had arrived. Graham offered his arm. Shall we go find some trouble in Salzburg? I smiled and nodded. Lead the way. The cafe sat quietly between 2 crooked streets, warm air fogging the glass. Outside, church bells layered themselves over distant tram lines. I stirred cocoa slowly while snow flickered down like unhurried punctuation. Wyatt had texted again while we walked. Mom, call me. Please. I opened the thread. The urgency was there now, thin, jagged, unfiltered, but still wrapped in confusion, not accountability. There was worry, yes, but no apology. No, I shouldn't have said that. No, I see you. The words hovered like unfinished math. I thought back to when Wyatt was 10, the year he volunteered to read at the school assembly and tripped on the microphone cord halfway to the podium. He was mortified. But instead of running off, he stood there, cheeks blazing, and pulled a folded page from his pocket. The paper shook in his hands as he read, My mom makes everything better. Even when things are bad, she makes the world easier to stand in. The audience had melted. The teachers dabbed their eyes. I saved that letter in an old cedar box with school ribbons and clay ornaments. He'd written it without being asked, without performance, just truth. Somewhere along the way, he stopped writing letters like that, and I kept waiting for the next one to appear like a season that simply hadn't arrived yet. The ache today wasn't loud. It was shaped, familiar, almost polite. You're very quiet, Graham said gently when he returned with tea refills I hadn't asked for. Thinking, I admitted. You're allowed to do that, he said with a half smile. I exhaled a laugh. I used to think I needed permission. He nodded as if he understood the sentence beyond its surface. Then, without ceremony, he raised his mug toward mine. To departures that teach us more than arrivals. Cocoa splashed softly as the cups met. And to realizing, he added that sometimes leaving isn't abandoning, it's remembering. The bells rang again, deeper this time, lower, almost like a signal calling us back into the world waiting outside. The phone rang just after breakfast, long enough that I almost let it go to voicemail. But something told me to answer. Mom Wyatt's voice landed, fast-clipped with worry. "Are you okay? We've been trying to reach you. Why didn't you tell us you were going away?" "Bridget's freaking out." I leaned back into the chair by the window where the light poured in through half-open curtains. "I'm fine, Wyatt," I said, calm. "Truly, I just stayed home, like you asked." There was a pause on the line. "But you're not home," he said, confused. "I am," I answered. "Just not the home you expected." Another pause. Deeper this time. "Mom, I didn't mean it that way." I smiled faintly, not bitter. "I know you didn't. But words don't need to be cruel to cut. Sometimes forgetting someone feels sharper than remembering them with anger." Across the room, Graham looked up from the guidebook he was flipping through. He didn't say anything, just listened respectful and still. Bridget didn't mean it either. Wyatt said softer now. She just thought it'd be simpler. Her mom had everything planned. The table, the food, the family I finished for him. "Mom, that's not fair. It's all right," I said gently. "You didn't think I'd be alone. You thought I'd understand. And I do. But understanding doesn't erase what it felt like to be told I wasn't part of the picture." I could hear him exhale. "I guess I just figured you'd be fine." "I am fine," I said and meant it. "But not because I stayed where you left me. Because I chose something different." The line was quiet again, and for once it didn't feel like tension. It felt like reckoning. Well, he finally said, "I'm glad you're okay." "You sound different." I looked at the snow collecting on the windowsill. Maybe I am. I didn't need to say more. I could feel the shift in his silence. Graham folded the guidebook and said quietly, "Train leaves in 20. Want to see the Abbey Christmas morning, arrived in Salzburg, like a whisper. Quiet street snow pressed into cobblestones and bells ringing from somewhere above. Our group gathered in the lounge after breakfast, each holding something small wrapped in paper or tied with string. No rules, just gestures." I handed Graham a soft-bound notebook I found 2 days earlier at a stall in Vienna. Inside the front cover, I had written a single sentence. "You helped me fill the blank pages." His eyes read it slowly. Then he closed the cover with care. "This means more than you know," he said. In return, he placed a tiny box in my palm. Inside was a snow globe glass and delicate no more than 2 inches across. 2 wooden chairs sat facing a painted hearth, the kind you'd find in a cabin tucked far from roads. "It reminded me of stillness," he said, "of warmth you carry, not wait for." I nodded the words, catching somewhere in my chest. There had been so many years when I didn't know what I was carrying. Just wait. But this felt like something lighter. The rest of the day passed in gentle motion. We visited a monastery perched on a hill, shared soup in a quiet cafe, and watched children sledding in the late afternoon sun. Graham and I didn't talk much. We didn't need to. That evening, back in my room, I scrolled through the photos I'd taken. I paused on one from the market rows of handmade candles, the soft blur of shoppers behind them, and the river in the distance reflecting the gold of twilight. I posted it without filters. No faces. No explanation. This year I didn't decorate a tree. I decorated a memory. I set the phone down and let it buzz somewhere out of reach. The world could react, or not. What mattered was that for once, I had lived this story for myself. The next morning, our train rolled toward Switzerland, and I leaned into the rhythm of it, watching frost draw soft lines across the window pane. I unlocked the front door, half expecting the stillness to sting. But it didn't. Everything was exactly where I had left it. My wreath, the unused garland around the banister, the stack of cookbooks I never opened this year. Still, the air felt lighter. I unpacked slowly. The scarf Graham had given me went into the hallway basket. The snow globe found its place on the mantel. Beside it, I placed the small carved angel I bought in Salzburg, its wings slightly uneven like it had been shaped by an honest hand. A week passed. Then Wyatt called. "We'd like to stop by," he said. "The kids miss you." When they arrived, the children didn't hesitate. They ran through the living room like it still belonged to them, tugging on pillows asking for hot chocolate, digging through the old game drawer like no time had passed. Bridget stood near the kitchen island, holding a foil-covered dish. "Pumpkin pie," she said, placing it down. Wyatt made the crust. I brewed coffee. No lectures. No unspoken resentment. Just the sound of spoons against mugs and children laughing down the hall. We sat in the living room as the kids unwrapped leftover candy canes from the bottom of a tin. The tree lights were dimmer now, but still glowing. Bridget watched me quietly for a while, then said, "You look different." I turned, slightly not startled. "I feel different." She nodded, like she wasn't sure what to say next. And maybe that was enough. We didn't need to untangle the whole mess in one visit. Sometimes a pause is the best start. As they packed up to leave, Wyatt hugged me longer than usual. The kids kissed my cheek, sticky and quick. After they drove off, I stood by the fireplace. I reached up and centered the angel beside the snow globe. 2 reminders of what I'd found and what I'd chosen. There were no fireworks, no dramatic turns. Just the quiet weight of presence, a new rhythm, and in that rhythm, a door opened to something I hadn't expected continuance.